All right. Fantastic. Okay, CVs, cover letters. Oh, we're going to do cover letters today too. Hot dog. We're going to do a little bit of everything. Um, we're going to talk a lot about how to make sure that these documents that you use for all kinds of different job searches are the best that they can be. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about over the next hour or so. I have to share absolutely first a disclaimer about CVs, resumes, and cover letters. And the first is the very big one that opinions vary. What I'm going to tell you, what your friends will tell you, what your PIs will tell you, everybody has a little bit of a different opinion on what they're looking for in these documents. And the reason is it's because everyone's looking for what they want to see in that document. So in the end, you get to make it whatever you want this document to be. It is your document, it's not mine. But I'm going to give you the best advice I've seen by the knowledge of lots of different resumes and CVs and cover letters that we've seen over the years. Okay, so we're going to give you that knowledge. But at the end of this, you get to make your own decisions on what your document will look like. The other thing is that no document will look alike. One of the things I'm not a big fan of is all the templates that are out there for CVs and resumes. I want you to be able to make your document look like you and have your stamp of approval on it. Now, that said, it also needs to be professional. I remember one time when I was a postdoc, another postdoc was applying for a lab in our lab. And instead of like the little dots, the bullet dots, he put snails for every one of the different bullet dots. And it's been 20 years and I still remember this guy with his snails, and he didn't even work on snails. So this is not necessarily a creative writing experience. It really is a professional writing experience. If you are really looking for an academic faculty position, I really want to implore you to go watch our academic videos that are on our YouTube page. They'll go into much more depth on all the types of things specific for a CV. We're going to give a big gloss over about CVs today, but those are a little bit more specific. My last disclaimer or words that I like to put out there is make sure that you use your own words. This is not the time to plagiarize. You can actually find my resume, CV, etc. on the internet in lots of different places. And when I read other people's documents, what I hate the most is to see my resume come back to me. And so you can use these as templates, but really use your own words as you build these documents for yourself. All right, I think the first thing everybody wants to know is what are the top errors that people see in these documents, whether this be your CV, your resume, or your cover letter. First is spelling errors. Absolutely, spelling errors are one of the first things that will make a resume go into somebody's trash file. And one of the interesting things about spelling errors is making sure also that your headings, a lot of times, many of us will make our headings all capitalized, and spell check does not do well with all capitalizations. And so I really recommend making sure that other people are reading your document for spelling errors. Another top error that we see is formatting issue. Not enough bullets. So if it's in like paragraph form, no one's going to read that. Okay, so it's really difficult to read. If you have inconsistent styles, fonts, etc., I definitely see this mostly like you'll have your research portion and your education portion in Times New Roman, and then I hit your publications and all of a sudden it's Arial font. I want everything to be in the same font. If it's difficult to read, maybe things are not in an expected order, or the last one, if something dangles across page breaks. Too many words is the kiss of death here. People don't have time. I think statistically, people read resumes for about 20 to 30 seconds before they just give up on them. And so you need to make it as clean a document as you possibly can. One of the things I like to equate it to is kind of like a newspaper, right? When you're thinking about a newspaper, what do you read first? The top half of the front page. And so you need to think about your CV and your resume documents similarly, where the most important things are at the very, very top. especially for those of you who are considering industry positions or other types of non-faculty positions. I really want to see a context of your work, and we'll go into this in much more depth in a couple of slides. What I mean there is I want to see I did X to understand Y. Giving me that context of why I should care about your research is so much more important than anything else I can give you. But I don't want too much of a description of your work. It needs to be short. It needs to be very simple, again, to catch the reader's attention because they're reading so many of them. You want to get them right out there. This is true. Number 6 is true for resumes, not cover letters. But I want to see some very specific types of words that emphasize your accomplishments, identified versus investigated. And I'll give you a whole list of really good resume verbs a little bit later. Hard to find dates. Okay, so that is something that it's a struggle for me. I'm reading a resume right now, actually, that I'm like, I can't even figure out when this person went from part A to point B. So I really recommend pulling the dates out and either always putting them on the right-hand side of your document or always putting them on the left-hand side of the document. Doesn't really matter which one, right? So, but just be consistent through your document. So if you put that in the right-hand side for your education, do the same thing when you're talking about your research. For those of you who are NIH trainees, the NIH alphabet gets you all the time. You know, we speak in acronyms here at the NIH. So putting things such as IRTA or CERTA or visiting fellow doesn't always make sense to people outside of the outside world. So you can just say, I'm a postbac, or I'm a postdoc, or I'm a graduate student, and that's fine. You don't have to put your specific title in the job. And we're going to talk a lot about number 9 as one of the top errors where it's not targeted to the job or doesn't use keywords. And this is specific for resumes, not CVs. So that leads us to the next slide where, like, literally, what is the difference between a CV and a resume? When do you use either one? The purpose of a resume really is so it's a targeted marketing tool. So your resume 100% will change depending on the type of job that you're applying for. On the other hand, a CV is an ongoing academic work history. And in all honesty, the only time you really need a CV as it's classically put out there is for a faculty appointment, a faculty job. A lot of other places will say, send us a CV, but they almost mean a resume or a CV resume hybrid. Okay, so they really want more information. A classical CV is really for a faculty appointment. The content will be a little bit different. So the content for a resume is going to be very relevant for the position and very succinct. So it may not have everything you've always done versus a CV that always has everything. My CV is much longer than my resume, much, much longer than my resume. The page length, a resume is typically 2 to 4 pages. Now, for those of us in the sciences, we're not one-pagers. This is not what we do anymore. We're normally 2 pages plus probably a page of your publications. The only time I have seen resumes that have to be considered one-pagers are if you're thinking about a management consulting position like McKinsey, Booz Allen, etc. That's the only place that I've ever seen resumes with PhDs need to be 1 page. And if you are thinking about management consulting resumes, there's an amazing amount of resource on the McKinsey homepage on how to develop your resume specifically for that particular field. Now, a CV, on the other hand, can be unlimited length. It really doesn't matter. Mine's probably 5 or 6 pages. Probably for a typical postdoc, it's 4 to 6 pages. It really just depends on all the different things you put in there. I once read one that was 72 pages. I don't think you need to go that far, but they do have, it's a virtually unlimited length. In his defense, he was a Nobel Prize winner, so, you know, okay, fine. Now, here's the different components for the different documents, okay? So the always items, So the always items, you're always going to have this on here. The first is your contact information at the very top. Now, there's a lot of discussion in the field about what parts of your contact information do you need to actually put here. 100% you need your name, your telephone number, and your email address. And currently, in this day and age, I really could care less what email address you put there. It could be a Gmail, it can be your work ID, your work email. It doesn't matter. If you would have asked John and I 15 years ago, we would have said, always put your work email. But now it doesn't matter. No one cares. In fact, a lot of people actually start a brand new email address specifically when they go on the job hunt. And the reason is a couple. Number one, it's easier to find, shuttle all the information so it doesn't get, all put in with your Macy's every time Macy's wants to email you. So it allows all your job search stuff to go to one email. The other reason I really like making a brand new email address for this is currently at my point in my career, I would have lost out on 2 jobs because both times the information for an interview went to my spam folder. So if I had a brand new email address, it's a lot easier for me to check my spam folder, and also it probably won't go into the spam folder quite as fast, right? Now, as for whether you need to put in your business address and your home address, nowadays it's not a big a deal. It really isn't. If you just had your email address and your telephone number, no one's going to blink an eye on that anymore. It's totally up to you how much of the information you want to put in on your contact information. Another section that's absolutely critical, regardless of what you have, whether it's a CV or a resume, is your education. And I want to see your education go in reverse chronological order. So for those of you with PhDs, your PhD will be up at the top. I recommend putting your postdoc actually over in, excuse me, in your research and employment history. Your postdoc really isn't in education. Education is 100% only degrees. The other thing I often see hop into education that should be somewhere else is relevant coursework. So you took a class on scientific writing or something like that. That goes in relevant coursework down over here. Education is just for the degrees that you have. If it is required for your degree or for your field to have a certificate or a license, medical doctor, clinical psychologist, etc., that goes in a separate section right after your education. And then if you are making a resume, you will have a skill section. If you are making a CV, ixnay, no skills. No skills on a CV, only on a resume. Now, we're going to dive deeper into a lot of these different sections over here, but especially we're going to dive deeper into the summary of qualifications, which is only for a resume. We'll dive into that in a couple of slides. You may have a teaching and mentoring section. It's almost always put on a CV. A teaching and mentoring section, I would always put on my CV. But for a resume, it may or may not go there. It really depends on how important that is for the job that I'm applying for. You could have a leadership section. This is, you were the president of the Biochemistry Association or something like that. That's great. I really want to talk about these next 2 sections because this is where I see a lot of problems in resumes and CVs from our biomedical workforce. Grant support and honors and awards. And so many times we see in our office that people conflate these two, where honors and awards are things like travel awards. You won something for the best poster. You were the best freshman at Michigan State University, something like that, right? Grant support is fellowships. You wrote for a fellowship. I really want to implore you that if you wrote for a fellowship and you got that fellowship, put it in its own section. A lot of times I see them intermingled in with honors and awards with a travel award. And now all of a sudden you've given the same weight to a $500 travel award that you did to a $500,000 of grant support that you got. So I really want to implore you that you separate those 2 out. Even if you're going to an industry R&D job, I still recommend putting grant support there because it shows you can justify your work. The next one is service, and this is kind of academic service. So this is, excuse me, I'm overcoming a cold, so I have this little cough. Academic service is such things as you reviewed papers for the Journal of Biological blah blah blah, or you participated in the hiring committee for faculty awards, etc. Memberships, this is something that can stay or can go. Out of all the things on the list, if this one went, nobody would care. But this was, you paid your dues to become a member of the Society of Neuroscience or something like that. Relevant coursework, and again, relevant coursework and much more updated coursework. One of the biggest challenges I see in the relevant coursework section is that you tell me about something you went to a decade ago, and now you use that technique on a regular basis. So even though you may have gone to a Cold Spring Harbor lab type of thing, if it was a decade ago and you use it all the time, I don't need to know that as relevant coursework. Major invited speeches and abstracts from poster presentations are next. Very often, this will also include the title of the talk or the title of the poster. I only want to see poster presentations that you actually presented, not ones that your name was on. Okay, so only ones that you were on. And when I talk about major invited speeches, this is things where it's not necessarily something you had to do as part of your degree. So it's not journal club, it's not stuff like that. This is where you were invited to go speak at an institution. Or your poster was pulled out to give a platform presentation. That's the kind of things we're talking about. You can also have sections on patents and inventions, and lastly, publications. One of the things I often see with publications is people who try to rearrange them so that, don't rearrange them, just put them in reverse chronological order. It doesn't matter that your name was first or last or second. I do recommend in your publications that you bold your name. Okay, so bold your name so it's easy to find it in there, that section. All right, so I see some questions. Let's see if we got anything out here. All right. We're going to get to the summary of experience pretty soon, so give me a second on that one.
I think the question about a T32, is that a grant or an award?
Okay, so I will get to that. All right,
Okay.
all right, all right. I'm just going to go down the questions here. You know what? It's not uncomfortable. I think Gideon has a neat question about, is it uncomfortable sometimes to use your email, your work email? You know what? It's totally up to you. Honestly, it doesn't matter anymore which email you use. So if you're more comfortable using your Gmail or something equivalent, that's totally fine. The other thing is at least at the NIH, the second you leave your position, your NIH email is turned off. So I often recommend using your personal one. Muhammad has asked a very good question about adding in your Google Scholar, Scopus, or ResearchGate at your CV. Absolutely, you could put it up very at the top next to your email address, kind of like at the top, but I would still put your publications in there. Do not use that as a way to get rid of your publications, especially if it's a CV. All right, T32, I would put that in as grant support fellowships. Okay, that's where mine is. You were selected to be that. Even if you have a single publication, yep, that goes into its very own section as publication. That's totally fine. If you win a poster competition, you would put it twice. Yes, at once you would put once in the honors and awards, selected as best poster competition, and then in the poster section, you would put in the title of the poster. Multiple awards for the same poster. I would just put it in the honors and award, best poster, and then put sub bullets underneath that, all the places that you won an award for that. If you had a poster that you created for a conference but weren't able to go, I would put an asterisk next to it and say wasn't able to go due to COVID or something like that. Specific citation format. Nope, there's not. I would use EndNote or whatever makes best for you. Would it pull out an NSF graduate fellowship program for grad school grant support? If it's a lot of money, if it's money, that you won, like for fellowship, put that into grants and fellowships. Bio sketches, we're actually not going to cover bio sketches today. They're a little bit different. The NIH has some really good information about a bio sketch, and so I would Google that to figure out how to fill out bio sketches. The NIH bio sketch thing, some people have been using for academic faculty positions, and I find them very difficult to read. I would still recommend putting in a typical regular CV. Eventually, when you start writing grants and fellowships, you'll need this bio sketch, but it's not really used as a job searching document. If you are invited as alumnus, as a parent institution, absolutely it counts as an invited speech. If you speak different languages, it can go in a language section, but it really depends on what you're doing next. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's wonderful. I'm very happy you can speak multiple languages, but it really depends on if it matters or not. Those are great questions, everybody, so keep them coming. I'm going to move on with the slide deck. John, again, is still going to monitor the chat, but we're gonna go on to the next couple of slides. Okay, so this comes out of our CV and resume type of document, which I'll give you some references to. I like this one because this is, again, a CV. This person decided to put both of their email addresses up here, totally fine. I like how they put their education, and then it's very clear, clearly defined with the dates here on the left-hand side. This one just has a quick little formatting issue that I would have popped it over. In a CV, there's not even any description of your research. I don't need that. It's really what your job is, where you did the job, and who your boss was. That's all I need to know in a typical CV. Now, on the other hand, a resume is very, very different, right? You'll have a summary of qualifications section, which we'll come back to. This person decided to put relevant coursework in here with their education. I'm not a big fan of that. If that would have come to me, I would have deleted this section here, this relevant coursework right here. I would have deleted that section. Whoops. I really like here down in the experience sections, right? Develop methods to understand secretion factors, to understand how these play a role in host microbe interactions. One of the big things in your research experience in a resume is for you to give me, I did X to understand why. It's so important to give that impact of your work. Now, this comes from my very good friend, Kim at Vanderbilt, who has this side by side, what an academic CV and a resume would look like for the exact same person. So you can see the CV is very, very similar to that CV I showed you a couple of slides ago, right? It's kind of boring. Let's call it what it is. It's boring. In a resume, which is good, boring, good boring, not bad boring. On a resume, on the other hand, it's much more detailed, right? That led a working group, collaborated with a team, authored or co-authored. This is what I would like to see. I will, at the end of the talk, share the slides. So I know that's coming. I will share the slides at the end of the talk, okay? I can't share slides and do a talk at the same time. My brain would explode. I want to switch over from CVs to talking a lot more about resumes, because for the most part, most of us will be writing different types of resumes, even if they say it's for, they want a CV. They really, a lot of times, want a resume. I think the question to ask yourself with resumes is, who is reading it? Who's reading your resume? And then how do you need to alter your resume depending on who is reading it? There's three people typically. People, I'm going to put in quotes. The first is the computer person, right? The computer is reading it for keywords. So it's really good to make sure that you're looking at the job ad and pulling out things from your job ad to directly put into your resume. The second person who's reading your resume is HR, or human resources. Now, these are likely people who don't have a scientific background, but understand the needs of the hiring manager. They are trying to match your resume directly back to the job ad to see if you're eligible for hire and if you have the experiences that really match the need that the hiring manager needs. The hiring manager is reading it. Does this person have the required skills? Can they walk in the door and do the job well, quickly, and cheaply, so to speak? And I think a big one, will they make my life easier? right? So they come in and help me out with my workload so that my life is a little bit easier. And I put that one in is because when you build your resume such that the hiring manager, it's easy for them to read, it already kind of puts them in as, I can work with this person, right? That's what they really want to know from here. Now, the summary of qualifications is only used for resumes. This is at the very top of the document, likely the first thing right after your name. Only for resumes. You will not put this in a CV. It is the easiest place to adjust for a job ad. It tells them why you are perfect. You're going to use action verbs with supporting evidence, okay? So they're usually about 4 to 6 bullets. So this is what I would have used when I was, this is mine. So an innovative research scientist with expertise in protein biochemistry. I have experience in enzyme kinetics, can successfully meet challenges, lead diverse projects. This would totally change depending on the job ad. And this is where I would change the bullets to really highlight what I could do for that job. But it's if you change nothing else on your resume every time you apply for a job, at least change this particular section. The next section will likely be your research and work history. And these are really done on both sides. The only difference between research and work history between a CV and a resume is if you put this little bullet here. If this was a CV, I would have only put this section and then I would have put my boss. In a resume, I take my boss off and I'm going to give you a little bit of an understanding of what my work is done, okay, for a resume. So this was me again. From 2002 to 2006, I was a postdoc. That was not my title. My title was not postdoc. It was something much weirder than that. But no one understood what that was. So I just put postdoctoral researcher. Now, a lot of times when I read your resumes, all I see is the front half. I did X. I don't see the back half of this. So the underline point, I explored group 2 intron mobility pathways. That's all you would normally tell me. What I really want to know is to understand how DNA can insert into non-ideal locations. So I really want the second half of this sentence on a resume so that I have an understanding of impact. This is especially true for those of you who are interested in industry R&D jobs. One of the things I've been on the phone with hiring managers and recruiters that they say about biomedical trainees who are coming into the industry workforce is that they don't understand the context of their work. And so if right from the very beginning, from your resume, you can give them context of why your work matters, you're already leaps and above most of the other candidates who aren't showing that they understand the impact of their work. You're also likely going to change the work history depending on the job you're applying for. So you can see that I currently, well, maybe you don't know, but I'm not a bench scientist anymore. I moved after my postdoc to really be thinking about career education for the next generation of scientists. So I'm going to flip things in my resume where I'm talking more about some of my volunteer experiences first, and then I'll talk about my research experiences second. So I'm going to tell you that, I was the vice president of the Biochemistry Grad Association, and this is what I did. And I'm going to give as much space to that because this is the kind of job I want as I'm going to give to my research. One of the things I often see, even when people are thinking about transitioning away from the bench, is their resume looks all about research. And I want to see that you have experiences beyond the research space. And so you might need to give me more information about what you did outside of the bench. You will likely have in a resume your research skills and techniques. This is not a laundry list. I don't want to see it go all the way down the left-hand side. I really want to see them organized. Okay, so this is one way that I've done it. Biochemistry, cell biology, microscopy, molecular biology, etc. You can organize it however you best see fit, but I do want to see that. I have a couple of additional things to add to this slide as we talk about it. The first one is really thinking about computer filters. It's unclear how many places are using computer filters. I was talking to a hiring manager at AstraZeneca just last week, and he says, no, we don't use them. I talked to somebody at another company, and they're like, absolutely, we use them all the time. If it does have to go through a computer filter, you need to be cognizant about what the words are in that job ad and be very specific. Good example of that is, let's take PCR, okay? Say the job ad has asked for someone who can do polymerase chain reaction. And you're like, yes, I can do this in my sleep. So you go to your resume, you start writing it down, and what do you put? PCR. Well, the job ad asked for polymerase chain reaction. If all you put is PCR, you may have missed the computer filter, depending on who put the information into the computer filter. So use whatever words are in the job ad, even if it doesn't make sense. Another good example of that is, I love it when a job ad asks for someone who can use Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Right? And you're like, seriously? Like, who can't at this point? But if the job ad has asked for it, just put a line in your resume about it. It doesn't hurt, and it helps you get past a computer filter. Again, my friend Kim Petrie from a couple of slides ago, she gave me a really interesting trick, is to put the entire job ad into Wordle, Wordle.net. It's that cloud, it makes the word clouds. And that is one way to kind of look at what keywords may be important for a particular job ad. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and answer a few questions. We got anything good here, John? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here we go. Hobbies or interests? Not usually. Right, John? Yeah, not usually. Should we include co-advisors? Yes. Maybe when I say co-advisor, I want to make sure we're clear on what we're all talking about. So if you have two different advisors, absolutely, you should put co-advisors. But I don't recommend putting, like, for example, your entire committee on it, right? So sometimes I see that. That's not what we really want. If there's a choice between submitting a CV or a resume, which one would typically be preferred? Good question. If it's for a faculty job, submit a CV. If it's for anything else, submit what you want, likely more a resume, because you want to show them that you can do that job. I always submit a resume. If your postdoc was related to a fellowship, I would still separate them, where you just call your postdoc underneath your research experiences, and then in grants and fellowships, you put your fellowship there. I do put them in different sections. Achievement gaps due to the pandemic. That's a really good question. I think everybody has given a lot of people grace right now. I don't think anyone anticipated that publication rate would be as fast as it would have been pre-pandemic. No one's worried about that. You can also talk about that in your cover letter if you wanted to, right? Especially if you're here at the NIH and how long we were shut down and how much that really influenced the amount of work that we can. I get it, but I don't think I would dwell too much about it and worry about too much achievement gaps, because I think everybody realizes that it was a bizarre time. How do you tactfully reference it in a cover letter? I don't even know, Gideon, I said that, and maybe I wouldn't. Don't don't dwell on it. I think that's the biggest one, is what I would say. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but I think my thing is like, my guess is you're crystal balling this one, and that it is much worse than it likely is. And so don't try to guess what the employers are looking at. Like, just give them what you have, and go that way. Good question on nationality. In the United States, it is illegal for them to ask you this type of question. So we recommend taking it off entirely. Now, that said, one thing I want to add on to that is, if you are looking for a position in the United States, and you, especially if you have foreign education and you have your green card, I recommend right up at the top, right by your name, green card holder. Put it at the very, very top. It just makes it easier for them to understand where you are. I'm not sure, Miriam, I see your question, but I'm not sure what level you are. But as a postdoc, I only put things from my grad school and above. I kind of started taking off my undergrad awards and my college achievements. Someone's asked me a question about a resume writer. I don't have anybody I recommend. It's you. I don't recommend resume writers. I just don't know. It's something that should be yours. If you need an H-1B, don't put it anywhere. Just don't put it. Just don't put it. Don't give them a reason to automatically put you into a different pile that you don't want to be in. All right. Okay. So, excuse me, everybody. I'm sorry about that. That's a good question. About including research presentations given an industry internship in your resume. It depends on if these were invited presentations or just something that was part of your job. And they would just go into a section on invited talks. That invited talk section would still be there. That's totally fine. All right, so I want to go, I'm going to move on. You guys can keep typing in questions, and trust me, we'll get to everything we can. I want to talk about skills organizations are seeking. This comes out from a 2011 jobs report that NIH and Monster did together. Now, this, yeah, you're like, okay, fine, Lori, this is from 2011. This doesn't mean anything. I brought in AstraZeneca to give a talk about a year ago, and honestly, they had almost the same exact list. So I think that this list is still really, really good. They're looking for 14-ish things: communication, problem solving, self-motivation, etc. Now, take a second, look at the list. What's the one thing you don't see? Technical skills. You don't see technical skills. The reason is that that's going to be seen in other places in your document. They're going to assume you have the technical skills. What we're really starting to kind of look at now is, how do you bring out all those other skills that you learn as a scientist, besides just pipetting all day or coding all day or whatever you do? How do we bring out the parts of us about collaboration and organization and the ability to work through difficult problems? A lot of this will sometimes come in through our cover letters and our interviews. But what I'm trying to start getting you to think about is that you need to start having stories and examples of all these 14 different things. It's not necessarily always going to go into your resume, but it is going to be something that likely would ask you about later. So this is where you start asking good questions to yourself. What were your job responsibilities? What decisions did you make? How do I quantify my results? I'm going to give you a document at the very, I have it linked in later on in the presentation about our CV and resume guide that has tons of these questions that you can go through and really answer one-on-one to really kind of make sure you're not forgetting anything in your documents as you move forward with them. And let's take apart some of these skills that are non-technical skills and are often different headings on people's resumes. One big one that often is on there is communication skills. What we normally see on your document cracks me up, because you'll write excellent verbal and written communication skills, and that's all you'll tell me. And I'm like, well, of course you're going to say you have excellent verbal and written communications. No one's going to say, pretty good verbal and pretty good written. Like, no one's going to say that. They're going to say this. But I want proof. As someone who's reading this, I want proof. So here's some things you can say. And again, this is for a resume, not a CV. You would never put these things on a CV. But your communication skills section of your resume could have something like presented X number of posters and Y number of talks. wrote SOPs, standard operating procedures, journal articles, reviews, lay audiences, edited lab grants and manuscripts before publication, negotiated a large equipment purchase, Speak X, a valuable asset in this job, right? So different types of things that you can say about communication skills to have that section. Another one we often see on resumes, again, we're on resumes, is that you mentored X number of undergraduate students. That's fine, but it doesn't really give me a lot of information about what that actually means. You can actually change this up depending on what type of job you're looking for. So say you're going to an industry R&D job. You could say, responsible for hiring, supervision, and performance review of 3 junior scientists. Okay, saying the same thing. Science administration, mentoring groups of girls, right? It's just different type of thing. Consulting. Now, consulting is an interesting one. Consulting is really, it's much more succinct. And you got to think the job about being a consultant is about getting other people to do something that you've proposed. Okay, so that's what the job of a consultant is. So you would say effectively communicated and transferred complex technical information to junior personnel to assist them with problem solving, right? Consultants are about problem solving, good communication skills, and really kind of like making proposals. Project management, really cool job in industry where you are helping the R&D, the manufacturing, the marketing, all these people kind of be on the same page to get the drug all the way to market. Okay. Now, the cool thing about a project management is that your job is to get lots of people to do stuff. They don't report to you, and to get them to do that stuff on time and under budget. Okay. So that's the job of someone who's doing project management. So if you're thinking about mentoring undergraduate students, and you're thinking about it as someone who does project management, empowered project staff to meet quality standard, use resources effectively, and deliver tasks on time. It's the same thing, but said as if someone who is doing project management. Here's another one. A lot of times I'll see on your resume that you were a member of a committee. Okay, so in industry, it's developed a novel strategy, identified experts, gained stakeholder buy-in, implemented plans according to timelines and budget restrictions. Okay, again, for industry, they want to see what did you do and how did you do it within budget restrictions. Science policy, this job in particular, is about talking to lots of people and encouraging them and facilitating conversations, and also making sure that you're getting lots of different types of people to talk to each other. Okay, so science policy, interpreted and applied administrative guidelines around financial management, procurement, and facility use, facilitated communication, established career professionals and juniors. Okay, so it's really kind of like establishing this communication and understanding the programmatic side on the back end. And the science administration, my job, I want to see, can you organize a whole bunch of people? Do you understand all the different facets that go into my job? So it's organize a career symposium attended by 4,000 students, highlighted different career tracks, etc. Okay, so you can change up what you're saying. Some of these are a little too wordy. I think now I would start, trimming up the words on these. But I wanted to give you an idea of how to change things depending on the type of job that you're going after. Here's another one, transgenic mouse model. Industry, that you did it. What the result was you got publications and money. Project management, remember that one was about doing things on time and under budget, right? Regulatory affairs. This is an interesting one, this last one. In regulatory affairs, what I want to know is, do you understand the regulations around the work that you're doing? So here for a transgenic mouse model, you're going to talk about that you worked with the animal use and care, biological safety committees, and that you know that there's tons of documents and that they can be completed on time and under schedule. So ways to improve your document here. Make sure that it's reverse chronological order. Oh, and be consistent across the document. So what I mean is I want to know what you're doing now and move backwards. Research you're doing now, backwards. Publications you did now, backwards. That's what I want. Be very specific and avoid jargon. We as scientists are notorious for jargon. Get it out. Show results. Be organized, right? Making sure your dates are on one side or the other. Using action-packed verbs. European format. Now, I put that one up there because some of you have already mentioned to me in the chat that you may be applying around the world. Today, what I'm talking about is entirely if you're applying in the United States. If you're going to go apply in Germany or Asia or wherever, you need to know what's important there. For example, in Germany, you better have a picture, you better have signed it, you better put your birthday, you better put if you're married. In the United States, no picture, no marriage, no nothing. So know what the format is in the country that you're doing. I already talked about spelling and proofreading, intentionally incorrect. I do love to have page numbers and last updated. So page numbers on each page, and at the very end when it was last updated. Font no smaller than 11 point. Remember, people like me who are old have to read these. So make it so that I can actually see it. Judicious use of bolding is important, but not too much. Every once in a while, the bolding is overwhelming. Plenty of white space, okay? Things like that. A couple of other tips to improve your document. Put your name in the file. When people send me their cover letters and their CVs, do you know how many I get that are just cover letter and CV? Because on your computer, it's only one. Like there's only one cover letter and only one CV. On mine, I get 17 a day. And so I don't know whose is whose. So put your name in the document name. I also recommend converting it to PDF, because one of my most favorite things to do as a horrible person is to turn on track changes and see what you did. So if you've converted it to PDF, I can't do that. Additionally, if you've converted it to PDF, it doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a PC, it opens up identically. And so you don't have to worry about that drama and if somebody can do it. That's not as big a deal as it was, I'd say 5 years ago, but I still lay it out there. Again, if it's in the United States, these are things you will not include. You will not include your photo, your height, your birth date, your reasons for leaving, your marital status, your citizenship, any of this, okay? That's not in a document in the United States. Unless it's a federal resume, and then you probably have to put your social security number and your citizenship. We'll update very soon how to get through usajobs.gov. We haven't done that one in a while, but maybe we'll do that one after the new year of how to get through usajobs.gov. So just watch your email. And that's a whole nother talk. A resume for a federal job is a whole nother talk because it is just so much more than what we're talking about today. This is a really cool graphic, and you gotta squint a little bit with me, okay? So this is a heat map that they did where they were looking with recruiters of what they looked at in the first 6 seconds of your document, okay? So look at this one here on the left. Just all you need to know is, do you see how many words? Like it's like prose. It's like reading poetry or something like that. And over here on the right-hand side, it's distinctly, you can see that there is sections, right? You can see the sections. There's good bolding. You can see there's good bullets and stuff like that. The difference is the person who was reading this one got to about here and they gave up because there's just too many words. The person reading this one made it all the way down to the bottom. And so we put this here as a nice graphic of being clearer with your document will help it make it easier on the hiring manager to see that you can do the job. Oh, look, more on CVs. I'm done with it. So this is our CV resume guide. You can get it from this particular link. It has a lot more here, recommendations and tips, some do's and don'ts, some memory jogger questions, and etc. But I want to get real quick to cover. There's also our YouTube channel has lots more videos, and Amanda is much more pretty than I am, and lots of things on our blog. about how to do your CVs and your resumes, and a whole thing on our blog on transferable skills. Many scientists struggle with that, the communication we talked about, the mentoring graduate students, et cetera. So I put that out there too to help you with your transferable skills. We did mention NIH BioSketches a little earlier. Here's some really good resources on NIH BioSketches for those of you who are looking to do those. And real quick, I just want to spend a few minutes on cover letters and why they're used. So employers use cover letters for about 3 reasons. Number 1, to figure out, can you do the job? Number 2, do you understand the organization and the needs of our organization? So have you actually read the job ad, and are you good for this job? And they're also using it to look a little bit about your written English communication skills. Can you form sentences? Can you get your point across? If you can write it to a person, that's awesome. I'd say about 85% of the time, it's going to be dear hiring manager or something like that. But if you can figure out who to get it to, all the better. Be brief as you can. It's usually about 3 paragraphs, and that's about it. Remember, they're reading a lot of these. So be very succinct in your cover letters. And always, 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 always have somebody else read it before you hit send. In my career, when I was a postdoc, I was writing my cover letters. And I had, like all of us, I had a cover letter thing where it was, thank you very much. And I think I'd be a nice addition to blah, blah, blah organization, right? So I sent one off to Howard Hughes. I think I'd be a nice addition to HHMI. I opened up the same document, started to put it off, sent it off to AAAS. But it still said HHMI at the bottom of I think I'd be a great addition to HHMI. They're like, yep, see you later. They didn't even give me an interview. So 1 page, 3 to 4 paragraphs. A lot of times nowadays, this cover letter is actually the body of your email address. The first paragraph is how you found the job, why you're interested, and why them. So it's a good point for them to say, I understand what you do, and this is how I can help. The second and third paragraphs are really about how you are relevant, how you have the relevant qualifications for this position. Explicitly listing the skills that relate back to the job ad that you're applying for. The third is like, a little bit more on your qualifications and a little bit more examples specific from your resume. And the fourth paragraph I call the blah, blah paragraph, right? It's the blah, blah. Thank you very much. I look forward to following up. Here's my email address. I'm interested, blah, blah, blah. You have to put that in there because it's polite, right? It's a polite way to end the letter. Okay, so here's some examples. And these are from our cover letter guide, which again, I'll give you the link to, right? I'm excited about the position. I've always been interested in away from the bench careers, actively searching for this, etc. Okay. There's I have more slides here at the end on cover letters, but I want to have enough time to get to your questions. And since you're going to get the slides, there's lots more out there on resumes and cover letters with our documents. If you are an NIH intramural trainee and you want to make an appointment to have your CV, your resume, or your cover letter reviewed, this is the link you would use for that. And that will allow you to make an appointment with John, Anne, or Denise, and Amanda when she returns. If you are not at the NIH, please check with your University Career Center to see if they will see your resumes and CVs, and or your local postdoc office. And lots of other resources that I'm going to give you coming up. Okay, John, let's head over to the chat. What we got here? Oh.
We've got quite a bit. I've been trying to answer a couple of them. I think there's one here about, do you recommend writing a resume first, then updating LinkedIn, or vice versa? So many hiring managers looking at LinkedIn.
I would do them in parallel. Right? Do them about the same time. I see a really interesting one here about foreign education. Does it necessary to put the place, city and country, or institute name? It really depends on where you're applying. Usually you put the city and the state. Like even for me, for my PhD at Texas A&M Texas A&M. I put then College Station, Texas after it. So you'll probably still need the city and the country too.
Mhm. So there's one here about, is color fine if it's something dark light or navy blue?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Color's an interesting one. I used to have that in there when people used to make copies, and so I should take that one out. It used to be for when people were making photocopies, and who does that anymore? There's an interesting one here, John, on how to include a medical leave of absence. I don't even think it's necessary to put anything in there, right? Just
I
leave
wouldn't
it
say in a
be.
resume, no. I wouldn't say in a resume or even cover. It invites the interviewer to maybe inquire about why that was. If it's something you need to mention, you could mention it during an interview, but not here. On this document, I would say.
Really good question here about references. I always have them on a third page, like or whatever, right? After a page break. And if they ask for references, I send them. If they don't ask for references, I don't. And so it really depends. Oh, you absolutely can put your pronouns up there. That is absolutely fine. So the differences between an academic and industry cover letters are not that different, honestly. Both of them are going to talk a little bit about your history, a little bit about how you fit the job, and a little bit of how you see your future. The biggest differences is that an academic cover letter is going to have a little bit more about how you see yourself fitting into that department, that institution, the kind of teaching load that you would have, and how you would set up kind of your own research plan. There's some really good information about that in our academic hiring YouTube video to kind of go along and to put a little bit more into that.
Can I just add something real quick?
Yeah.
When you are, I see this quite a bit, when you're applying for a position, writing a cover letter, make sure they know in the cover letter what position you're applying for, because they might have a whole bunch of different positions open. They don't know what you're applying for. So I have applicants that say, I've applied several times to positions and I'm not getting any contact back. And then I say, well, let me see your application materials. And it just says they sent the CV and this are my skills, but they're not saying what job am I applying to. So I would recommend that's probably one of the first or second things you write in your cover letter so they know.
Yeah, I'm applying for, and then give the specific job number that is on their system, right? Yeah. And then another one here that adds on to that is someone asked us about, what if they have an employee referral internal? That goes in that first paragraph, all in that first paragraph. Yeah, good questions, everybody. Education, it's an interesting one. It can be anywhere. I like it at the very top. That's where I want to see it. I know other people will tell you to put it at the bottom, so you get to put it wherever you want. How about that for an answer? I know. Okay, so I am hopefully going to real quick figure out how to get. I saw one come in, John. Can you answer that one while I figure out how to get the slides into the
Let's see. Question: can we highlight in our cover letter what we are looking for? I would say it's really like when you're saying that, I think it would just be, you would roll that into what interests you about the position. It's not like you're saying I'm looking for something, unless it's, you know what I'm saying? I'm interested in this position because I want to do this, or I want to have this actual experience in this particular job, or I have something I want to offer and I'm looking for this. Yes, but not like you're looking for something and exploring. Because sometimes when we hear some employers, right, they're saying we're not looking for someone that wants to come here and learn and explore. We need someone that comes in with some actual experience with the expertise. So it depends on how you frame it. I'd be more clear about how what you're looking for is that position, that particular fellowship.
Someone asked about listing conferences.
Yeah.
Presentations, were you on the study team? But it was given by another person. Sorry, I usually say my rule of thumb is only list poster presentations and conferences stuff that you delivered. Otherwise, eventually that's going to show up in your publications, which is so much more valuable. then, and you can have, oh my gosh, I forgot to say something. For those of you who are still here, you're lucky. You can have 2 different sections with your publications. One with is publications under preparation and one that have already been submitted. It's perfectly fine to have some publications that are working on that. Media coverage about your work, I often see that as like, it's usually from a paper, right? So you got a paper and then your paper was highlighted. I normally see that like at the end of the reference, right? So it's like Conlin et al. 2017, blah, 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 blah. And then an asterisk highlighted as Journal of the Week or whatever. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand when people put the journal scores on there. It is something that like, it's like one of those visceral reactions and I will always take it off. But remember, that's my opinion. Other people may have other opinions and you can decide what you want to do. It's totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my bag though. All right. I don't see anything else rolling in here, John, and we have hit 4:03.
That's right.
Everyone, I will send you probably tomorrow. Don't panic, but I'll send you tomorrow. I'll send you the slides. I'll send you the CV resume guides, and I'll send you the what's the last word I'm having? The recording. That's it. I'm done. Obviously, words are hard. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really, really enjoyed having you. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Monday. Okay. Bye.